Imagine surviving 400 days in a combat zone. You've dodged IEDs, slept in the dirt, and counted every single second until you could hold your wife and daughter again. But then the letters stop coming. The phone calls go straight to voicemail. And when you finally step off the plane on American soil, the terminal is filled with families screaming and hugging, but no one is screaming for you. This is the story of Sergeant Mark Daniels, a man who thought his country and his family had moved on without him. He thought he was walking home to a broken life. He didn't know he was walking into a miracle. The silence began 3 months before Mark's deployment ended. At first, it was just missed calls. Then, the weekly video chats with his wife, Sarah, and their 6-year-old daughter, Emily, were canceled. "Bad connection," Sarah would text. "Busy at work." Emily has practice. The excuses piled up like the sandbags outside Mark's barracks. Eventually, the communication stopped altogether. For a soldier deployed halfway across the world, silence isn't just quiet, it's a weapon. It plays tricks on your mind. Mark lay awake at night, staring at the canvas roof of his tent, wondering if he had done something wrong. Had the distance been too much? Had Sarah met someone else? The fear of abandonment was almost worse than the fear of the patrol. When the day finally came to rotate back to the States, the mood in the transport plane was electric. Soldiers were cheering, showing off pictures of the welcome home parties they knew were waiting for them. Mark sat near the back, clutching his duffel bag, staring blankly at the floor. He hadn't told anyone that nobody was coming for him. He was too ashamed. The plane touched down in North Carolina on a gray, overcast Tuesday. The hangar doors opened, and the noise was deafening. Fathers were lifting their children. Mothers were weeping. Mark walked through the crowd, eyes forward, trying to make himself invisible. He grabbed a taxi outside the base. "Where to, soldier?" the driver asked, eyeing Mark's uniform in the rearview mirror. "Just take me to 42 Maplewood Drive," Mark whispered. "And please don't turn on the radio." The ride to his hometown took an hour. As they entered the suburbs, Mark looked out the window. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, yet completely alien. The oak trees were turning orange for autumn. Kids were riding bikes. Life had gone on perfectly fine without him. When the taxi pulled up to his small ranch-style house, Mark's heart sank. The driveway was empty. The blinds were drawn tight. The grass, usually manicured, was overgrown, reaching up to his shins. It looked abandoned. He paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a long time. He was terrified to open the front door. If he walked in and saw the house empty, furniture gone, pictures taken down, he knew it would break him in a way the war never could. He walked up the steps, his combat boots heavy on the wood. He reached for his key, his hand shaking, and unlocked the door. Silence. The air inside was stale. He walked into the living room. The furniture was still there, but covered in white sheets. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light, cutting through the blinds. There were no photos on the mantel, no toys on the rug. It was a ghost house. Mark dropped his bag. He sat on the floor, put his head in his hands, and finally let the tears fall. He was a decorated sergeant, a leader of men, weeping in his empty living room. He had survived the war, but he had lost his home. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a text from a number he didn't recognize. "If you're home, Come to the backyard. There's one thing left for you to see." Mark stared at the screen. He wiped his face, confused. He stood up, unlatched the back door, and stepped out onto the porch. He didn't step into a backyard. He stepped into a sea of people. There wasn't a sound at first, just hundreds of faces looking up at him. It wasn't just Sarah and Emily, it was his parents, his old high school football coach, the mayor, the guys he served with years ago, the neighbors. And then he saw it. Behind the crowd, where his old, rotting tool shed used to be, stood a brand new structure. It was a beautiful, fully finished guest house and woodworking shop. A dream Mark had talked about for years, but never had the money to build. A banner hung across it. "Welcome home, Dad. We built this for you." Sarah stepped forward from the crowd, tears streaming down her face, holding Emily's hand. Mark fell to his knees. I don't understand," he stammered. "Why didn't you write? Why was the house empty?" Sarah ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "We wanted to write, Mark, but we wanted this to be perfect. We moved in with my mom 3 months ago, so we could save every penny to pay for the materials. And the town, they didn't let us pay for labor." She gestured to the crowd. "Everyone here, the plumbers, the carpenters, the electricians, they're your neighbors. They built this shop for you while you were gone. We didn't answer the phone because we were covered in sawdust and paint, working 18-hour days to get it done before your plane landed. We wanted to give you a future, Mark." Mark looked at the crowd. The abandoned house wasn't a sign of neglect. It was a sacrifice. They had lived out of suitcases so he could come home to a dream. The silence of the last 3 months wasn't absence. It was the sound of hard work. It was the sound of love in action. Mark hugged his wife and daughter tighter than he ever had in his life. He looked at the shop, then at the faces of his neighbors, waving American flags and wiping their eyes. He realized then that a soldier never really fights alone, and sometimes the quietest homecomings speak the loudest. Sergeant Mark Daniels was finally home, and he would never be forgotten again.